Today, we are excited to welcome Sarah Fairhurst, an experienced leader in the energy sector with a wealth of knowledge spanning over 3 decades. Sarah's expertise and extensive background has included founding a boutique energy economic consulting firm, advising businesses across Australia and Asia, and serving on various governance and advisory boards. With her deep expertise in energy strategy, power procurement, and marketing models, Sarah has been the guiding force for both startups and multinational corporations, navigating the complexities of energy transition. She now dedicates her time to mentoring, advising, and steering companies through strategic growth and transformation. Welcome to the Deal Flow, Sarah. It's a real pleasure to have you here.
Hi, Sarah. Glad to be here.
I love that power the powerless. When you actually said that, I was initially thinking it meant like the team and the staff, empowering the team and the people, but you're actually doing that in communities.
Oh yeah. Yeah, well, the owner of this company, he does like a good phrase. He does spend a lot of time, and some of the mission and stuff is very, very long, but power the powerless is really good, I think, because when you give people electricity, you don't just give them electrical power, you give them economic power as well. And so it does have double meanings.
It does. I love that. And so coming to that and being on the board, which is a critical role for growing a business, funding does become quite critical hurdle. So tell me a little bit about some of the businesses, and especially in the energy sector, from your perspective, what kind of funding or what role does what role do you play as a board member on a major organization in that funding requirement?
Well, I think something that I've been realizing as I've been talking more to different companies, not in the energy sector, is that actually energy is really quite unique. Energy projects, and I'm talking about energy generation projects because a lot of my expertise is in energy generation projects. You have an idea for an energy generation project. Let's call it a solar farm. You buy the land for the solar farm, you get the permits for the solar farm, you get your grid connection agreements, and all of this is costing money. Then you go and buy the equipment and you build your solar farm, and this is costing even more money. And then eventually, after you've done all of this, you generate some electricity and start getting some revenue back. And this is really different from the traditional kind of growth organization, because I've always also sat on some advisory boards for growth organizations where they find a project or a little product and they find a market for it, and then they sell it, and then they get some revenue, and then people will come in and they will fund them to enter a new market or to do some more marketing, and then they grow, and then they enter a more. So in your sort of traditional funding model, you're looking for a company that's got a product and it's got a few revenues, and then you can help inject funding, and it'll go up like that. Whereas with energy, it's like money in, and then suddenly revenue, and then the revenue is usually pretty flat. I mean, your solar farm doesn't expand. You may want to go and build a second solar farm, but often you'll do it as a separate company anyway. So yeah, you go from 0 to 100% pretty much overnight, and then it stays flat. And it's a different model than other types of companies. And so, if I use the example of Equus Developments, which I'm on the board of, they had done a fund. So the managing directors had a track record in developing infrastructure, but they basically founded Equus Developments, and then they went out and they got the Abu Dhabi Wealth Fund and they got Ontario Teachers Pension Plan to invest $1 billion in. So like the billion goes in, there's no revenue, but the money has gone in. And then over the last few years, sitting on the investment committee, we've been approving, this solar farm, that waste to energy project, this battery project in Australia. And so then there's still money going in, and we still have almost no revenue. There's a little bit from a solar and battery project in Korea and a waste project in Japan. But, compared to the amount of money coming in, the accounts are like tiny. But with a view to eventually, those projects that are under construction will start operating in the future. So yeah, funding in the energy sector is different, and it is a challenge.
Yes. And I guess that means managing expectations for people that are putting these funds in. So, how does that work? How do you get to that point where, if someone's put $1 billion in, what is their timeline for expecting of return?
3 or 4 years.
Okay. And is a project usually 3 or 4 years?
It depends. It used to be when I first started working in energy, when we were mostly looking at coal projects, you could comfortably say that 7 years was about how long it took to develop a coal project. And so yeah, you only really got utilities with big balance sheets and very focused project finance banks who would come in, and it was all very structured. But one of the advantages of the energy transition is that renewables is much more modular. So, you can put a solar farm in that's a couple of 100,000, or you can build a big one and it's millions. You can build a solar farm without any experience whatsoever. It is very much plug and play these days, although, to be honest, knowing something about how the energy industry works does help. Wind farms, similarly, you can build a small modular wind farm. You need a little bit more technical knowledge for a wind farm than you do for solar, but you don't need the amount of technical knowledge and permits that you do for a coal-fired power station. So the energy transition has changed who the energy producers are. I mean, we talk a little bit about prosumers. I mean, that's, if you've got solar on your roof, I've got solar here on my roof. Now, the people who used to just consume energy are also producing energy. So the energy market, and particularly with the energy transition, it's got a lot more complicated.
Yeah, it does sound so. But I guess it's a cultural change. So, 20 years ago, the transition wasn't where it is today. And so people are understanding that more. And I didn't realize, it was easy to build a solar farm. But I guess in comparison to what you've been working in the past is where you get that analogy from. But so companies are transitioning through it, or are having an energy transition. So what advice would you give to leaders about aligning their strategies and coming up with the transition that often is going to be regulatory against their organization or their business?
Well, if we're talking here about just normal businesses, I mean, this is a really tough question because, I mean, those regulations are changing all the time. And so you are getting challenges to your business which are driven by policy, less than, in the past. You're running your business, you've got a product, you've got a market, you're spending time thinking about what your customers want. And now you've got this energy transition thrown in on top of you. Well, I think my advice would be stop thinking about it as an externality, something out there that it's a tick box, it's a compliance exercise. I think that the people who do best in the energy transition are those who embrace it as part of the new normal of how we live in this world. So just like people are embracing hybrid working, work from home, meetings on Zoom rather than meeting in person, this is now the new normal. And so, you're a business, you need to be focusing on your core values and your objectives, and you need to integrate sustainability into your strategy. So, before, when you were thinking about what your customers want, it's like, what price you're going to sell it for, what does your widget do? Now you have to recognize that those customers also want your widget to be produced sustainably. When you're looking at your risks, are we going to have like a really high hike in our input costs? Are we going to lose our workforce? Well, actually, sustainability is going to fit into there as well. Your workforce may leave, particularly the younger ones, if they don't feel aligned with the purpose of the organization. If the organization is just ignoring the energy transition, just trying to do the minimum, is trying to greenwash, then those people are just going to leave and go somewhere else. And one of the biggest challenges, I mean, you asked about my challenges as a board member, and I talked about culture. Well, one of the reasons we spend so much time at the board thinking about culture is that with the wrong culture, all the good staff leave. And it doesn't matter what type of company you are, if all your staff leave because you've got a bad culture, you can't run your company. So, sustainability and the energy transition is now integrated at every level of a company. It may change your input costs because your inputs may be subject to a carbon tax, or you may be subject to a carbon tax, or your electricity price might be going up. It will impact on your staff, whether you leave them. It will impact whether they leave you. It will impact on your customers, how they view your company. It will impact on your financing. I mean, I'm on the board of a coal-fired power station in the Philippines, and we cannot get insurance to save our lives. I mean, that's a whole other story. We're looking to actually figure out how we can get this coal plant into a transition. But, as you go forward, funding will be linked to sustainability goals. Insurance will be linked to sustainability goals. The entire ecosystem that a company is operating in is having sustainability, energy, the transition. It is hitting you at multiple points. So forget about it being some externality. You need a department. You don't hire your quote sustainability expert and put them in an office down the corner and say, now we do sustainability. This is from the board, through the strategy, high level at the executive management team, and all the way through the organization. Just a moment. I'm going to.
No, definitely. And we're finding that with finance and investment, it's not just about looking for opportunities that are going to do a massive return, which obviously is a big driver, but everyone is looking at what is the ESG, what is the sustainability, what is the energy transition going to be like from a cost perspective, but because of a long-term return, they're recognizing that organizations need to have this in place. So I love that. You can't just stick someone in the corner.
So it's also an opportunity. I mean, it's not just a cost base. It is an opportunity to add value. There's all sorts of these new energy technologies. So you can invest on them. You can put solar on your roof. You can, invest in something like, I don't know, waste to hydrogen. I'm working on a waste to hydrogen project down in Victoria. It's just a fantastic idea. They're going to be in a rural area. They're going to be taking municipal solid waste, which is a real problem in Australia. What do you do with your municipal solid waste? I mean, they're competing with landfills, which are terrible for the environment, or incineration, which is also terrible for the environment because you're just putting all that carbon up into the atmosphere. But this project will take that waste and will actually use catalysts to turn it into a carbonless fuel, which then can be used in the transport sector. Yeah. And, so we're actually talking about a meme, which we may show, which is essentially a garbage truck, which says powered by hydrogen on the side of it, because, that garbage truck could actually be collecting the garbage, which is then being turned into the fuel which powers the truck. So it's kind of a really neat circular economy idea. But, it's really tough to get funding because, as I said before, just like a traditional energy project, you have to do the development, you've got to get the contracts with the council, you've got to buy the land, you've got to find the customers, you've got to build the project. And then after several years of development, and they've already been at it for some years, then you get your revenue. So, we really need finance that's going to buy into that development process and recognize you have to be in it for the long haul. But, for those innovative finance companies that can see that this is the future, there's returns to be made.
Well, it is about having a vision as to this is where it's going, and either you get on now and take that time to get there, or you potentially will miss out on that opportunity. So look, I'm really excited because I think they're being a part of our CapTech journey and presenting at one of our green energy events that are coming up, which you're going to be monitoring and moderating and coming to Australia for. So excited to see you in person and presenting.
Flying the day after tomorrow.
Awesome. So on that, so CapTech, you're flying over to Australia from CapTech along with many other delegates and investors and business people. So why do you think it's important for people in organizations, investors, people that want to be part of this conversation should attend CapTech?
Well, I mean, the question is, how do you meet people? How do you find the niche companies that need your money and they're going to be the companies of the future? unless you get out there and you try and meet them. How do those companies actually find some investors unless they get out there and they meet people? I mean, I was literally on the phone this morning with another company that I'm on the advisory board of, and he's got some tech software which is going to make rooftop solar more accessible for tower blocks. And we were having a discussion about how does he find those people who want to invest in his business. So I gave him one option, which is another organization I'm working with, which has a database of VC and PE funds. That's Fund Sniper. But the other thing, he's in the US, so coming to CapTech for him is challenging, but it's such a great international event. People from Southeast Asia, Australia, India, all coming together and having this this discussion. Senior leaders will learn a lot, so we've got some really insightful panels that they can come and learn the cutting edge. And they'll meet other senior leaders. I mean, so many energy conferences are just energy people talking to energy people, and they don't have the senior leaders there because the senior leaders know the energy industry stuff, but what they don't necessarily know is all the other stuff. And so when you get senior leaders meeting other senior leaders across a range of industries, we can learn from each other. They can network with each other on a peer-to-peer basis. I mean, it's really tough as a senior leader. Where do you meet your peers? There aren't that many events where you can get, peer-to-peer relationships at a high level, where you can get companies needing funds, companies with funds, meeting at that sensible level. So, I do think investors should definitely come, because we've got some fantastic pitches that they're going to be able to see. Companies should really want to come and pitch, because we're bringing investors from all over the world to come and look at our companies. And sort of senior leaders generally can come and learn more about the various information streams. Obviously, I'm biased because I'm going to, tell them lots that they need to know in the energy sector, but we've got other streams as well. Yeah. So, again, I'm flying down from Hong Kong in November in order to do this, because, and I did it last year, because I think it's just so important that you get senior leaders all in one room talking to each other, rather than, well, we'll send the intern so that the intern learns something. You actually got to focus on that high level dialogue.
Yeah, definitely. And you're right. I have been to those energy events, and as much as I love meeting the people there, they are the people that are engineering, and they're not the people that are necessarily making the decisions about where money is spent and what the next project's going to be, and whether your idea could be the next solution to the problem that they're currently feeling. So definitely a great opportunity to meet people like yourself and other experts at our event called CapTech in November 2024. Thank you, Sarah, so much for sharing your insights and experiences. I think we could talk all day and understanding, the things that are real lifely happening in that energy transition space. So to our listeners, please stay tuned for our next episode of The Deal Flow, and don't forget to join SIPBN and participate in our upcoming network events, which is including CapTech in November 2024. You'll find us at sipbn.com.au is our website, and we also are on LinkedIn and other social media channels.